Thank you very much. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Portsmouth CCG Governing Board meeting in public. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Fellows and Chair of the Governing Board. We're meeting virtually in response to limitations placed on governance by the pandemic. Members of the public have been invited to view this meeting via a link available from the website. Papers for the meeting are also available via the CCG website. Today's meeting is being recorded so that in the event of a failure of technology, it may continue and will be uploaded to the CCG website as soon as possible. Bookmarks have been added to the pack of papers in order to identify agenda items. Members of the board, you are asked to keep your camera on where possible and mute your microphones unless you are called to speak. Please only use the raised hands or chat functions to indicate you wish to speak, as any typed comments cannot be viewed by members of the public. So we'll go down the list of people who are here, if you can give your full name and your title. So let's start with Maggie.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Maggie McIsaac, Accountable Officer.
And Helen.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Helen Atkinson and I'm the Director of Public Health for Portsmouth.
Karen.
Hi, Elizabeth. I'm Karen Atkinson. I'm the Governing Board Nurse for Portsmouth CCG.
Linda.
Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Colley, GP and Clinical Director for Health and Care Portsmouth.
Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret Geary, lay member for Portsmouth CCG.
Sarah isn't here yet. No. So moving swiftly on, Carsten.
My name is Carsten Schaft. I'm a GP in South Sea and I'm one of the clinical execs at Portsmouth CCG.
Graham.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Graham Love. I'm a lay member.
Jackie.
Hello, Jackie Powell, lay member for Portsmouth CCG.
Andy.
Good afternoon, Andy Sylvester, lay member, CCG.
Simon.
Hello, I'm Simon Simonian. I'm a GP and one of the clinical executives.
Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Spandley. I'm Chief Finance Officer.
And Jo.
Hi, I'm Jo York, Managing Director.
Right, thank you. So we're missing Tawinda as well as Sarah Daly. David Williams has given his apologies and we're hoping that Kelly, I've forgotten her surname, is joining us. Kelly Nash is joining us from City Council. So hopefully she will join us shortly. And then we've got Jane. We've got two Janes. So Jane from City Council sorting out our live streaming, Jane Collis Business Development, and Justina as our Head of Governance. So moving swiftly on, item 2 on the agenda, we've got register and declarations of interest. So has anyone got any updates on this? Nice stunned silence. Good, good. So we're happy to accept that. Has anyone got any declarations of interest for this meeting? Not being discussed. Lovely. Thank you. So, sorry, IT issues. So we now move on to the minutes. We have been notified of some typos, some simple spelling mistakes, which have been received in writing prior to the meeting. Has anyone got any other corrections to add? Right, so are people happy to approve these minutes? Jackie.
Sorry, Elizabeth, I'm not sure if it is a typo or whether it's maybe a small inaccuracy, but on page 9, fourth bullet point from the bottom, and we're talking about the CCG would become the Liberty Protection Safeguarding Responsible Body. I think, would that be a Liberty Protection Safe Responsible Body? I don't know if we hold all of that responsibility alone.
I think that's a question for Karen, and if Karen doesn't know now, oh right.
Yeah.
Is that Karen?
Sorry, I was putting my hand up for something else. No, I don't know your answer, Jack.
Okay.
So say the question again. I might.
So as far as being the Liberty Protection Safeguarding Responsible Body, I thought that was split across the CCG and maybe the council.
It is, yeah.
But A,
yes.
I mean.
I think we have a shared responsibility with Portsmouth City Council. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's.
So we do need to get that changed.
Yeah. All right, I can send that to Jane as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for noticing that. Karen, did you have something else to?
Yeah, just a small thing on page 10. There's an action specific to me at the beginning of page 10. I actually thought the action was in the second paragraph, so it seems to be related to providing information about provider and primary care workforce, whereas I think Graham specifically asked me around the timescales for the themed review. So I think I'm wondering if the action is the action is with my name is against the wrong paragraph. That was all.
Right. Sorry, which
page 10? There's a.
I've got it. I can amend that.
Yeah. So
right. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Are we happy now to approve those minutes? We've got a few nods.
Approved.
Thank you. Right, so we haven't got a written update on the summary of actions this time because of pressure of work and time. However, I would ask Maggie for an update about some of the system stuff if she was able to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Very happy to do that. I'll sort of start where I'll finish. In fact, just later today, we're sending out what will be a really regular update on ICS development, just as we come through this final stage through to the 1st of July and through the summer, because we're conscious there is quite a lot happening, and sometimes people even need to know what hasn't happened, just so that everybody's clear. So that is coming, so look out for that. It'll be out very soon, but let me just give you the headlines. So the bill received royal assent a few weeks ago, so we are good to go for the creation of the Integrated Care Board on the 1st of July. So all our work continues, but we are definitely going ahead. And I've been asked by other people, that means every ICS across the whole of the country. So there's not a differential time. All ICSs go live on the 1st of July. And at the same time, as we know, clinical commissioning groups are formally dissolved, and the transfer of responsibilities and the safe transfer of estate and all our people goes with that. And thank you to everybody who's working on that safe transfer programme. So that's all going ahead. In terms of the Integrated Care Board and appointments, there isn't any formal news yet. As you know, all these posts are subject to fit and proper persons, etc., and that process is concluding. So I don't want anybody to be alarmed by that. It's just we are going through a process, and I anticipate both the executives and the non-executives will be announced soon, next week or the week after is my guess. The final bit of the board membership is the new bit, which we haven't had formally before, which is partner members. So that process is live at the moment. For political reasons, it had to be after the local elections. And there are 3 partner member groups. The first is primary care. So the proposition is for 2 members from primary care to be appointed to the board. Then the local authority members, and given the scale and complexity of Hampshire and Isle of Wight, the proposition is for 5 places to be offered to local authority colleagues, recognising we've got 4 upper tier authorities, as you know, we've also got districts and boroughs, and recognising that we want some of the rich skill and wisdom, children's, adult services, public health, and the opportunity to have a chief executive perspective as well as an elected leader. So that's the second group. And then the third group is NHS providers, and there are 2 places for that. So the process is that the organisations who can formally nominate do so. So those nominations will be coming in. The deadline for that is going to be the 6th of June. And then there's a process where the nominations have to go back to the organisations who are formally accountable for the nominations. You know, it's a bit of complex due process, but nevertheless that will happen. And then there will be a conversation with Lena Samuels as chair, and all the necessary proper fit and proper person checks that you would expect for a board. So that will all work its way through, and we hope and anticipate that we will be in a position to make those appointments in the time. So all of that is coming out. People will be able to see there's a pack, a bit like for appointments, there is a pack with all the requirements, and everybody will be able to see what it means for the organisations and also what it means for individuals. What Lena Samuels has also got to do is make sure that the board as a whole is diverse at every level, representing geography, skills, ethnicity, gender. So there's also a read across that Lena wants to do, but also is obliged to do. So all of that is quite a complex process that we're now working through. But what it means is the Integrated Care Board, with its responsibility for the NHS resource for Hampshire and Isle of Wight, which is circa 3.6 billion, will have those very different perspectives and views. And final thing, just to say, these nominations, it's quite easy to fall into the trap of thinking these are people who sort of are representatives or people who just kind of come. They are actually full members of the board, so full members of the unitary board. So all of that is working its way through, and that's why we're going to put out this newsletter on a regular basis now, just so that we can keep everybody up to speed and do it once in one place. But it's all looking to plan. Final thing to say is obviously the Integrated Care Board will have its first meeting on the 1st of July. The Integrated Care Partnership will then get going, and we'll see that work developing. And as we know, place is a crucial part of this, and we'll see the mechanisms beginning to work in place. So the rest really of this year, the rest of 22-23 will all be about development, and we'll continue on that journey through the rest of this year, and we'll make sure that everybody is kept updated along the way. So I hope that's enough, Elizabeth, for now to give you the sense of progress. But I think the headlines are, it's complex, lots of people involved, which is fabulous, lots of people wanting to be involved, shaping it. And I think what I would say is, probably compared to any other changes that we've been through before, there is more license to operate, there's more freedoms, more flexibilities. And I think what we're seeing in Hampshire and Isle of Wight, people are coming forward, welcoming that space. We are the people who know Hampshire and Isle of Wight the best, and its geographies, and I think people are really embracing that. And so we've got good debate, good challenge, and you know, we collectively are going to be the people to use this change for the purpose of, you know, getting better outcomes and solving many of the problems that we've been working on, but now with a bit of renewed focus. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Maggie? No, lovely, thank you. So if we can just go through the other actions on...
Elizabeth, sorry, Jackie has her hand up.
Just as I turned away, you put your hand up, Jackie. Go for it.
It's my fault. I can't get my fingers to the button quick enough sometimes. It was about either one of those boards. Where's the spot, do we know, for the voluntary sector, or how they're represented either in the partnership board or on the ICB? How do they get their voices?
Yeah, so the voluntary sector and all our communities, I mean, hugely important. So 2 ways, locally in place, you know, our very many of our organisations like this work very locally, but of course, as we know, some of them work much broader as well. So there'll be lots of opportunities in place, and also on the integrated care partnership. So we're in very active discussion with people, but there won't be people on the integrated care board. But as you know, the feeds and the governance routes from all the parts of Hampshire and Isle of Wight feeding up into the integrated care board will mean that those views are absolutely taken into account. We've been having very constructive discussions with Health Watch again about how each of the Health Watchers feed into local, but then how they work together to make sure some of the top issues get the attention of the integrated care board. And an example of that would be dental, where we know at the moment CCGs don't commission dentistry, but from July that will become the responsibility of the integrated care board. But that's an issue everywhere, so that's where Health Watch is able to work together and really feed in the views of local people together. You know, our MPs likewise are able to feed that through and really get those kind of issues to the attention of the integrated care board. So we'll need to work together on it to make sure it all works. That's the whole point of this. It's a change, but we'll need to all pay attention, that we all feel comfortable that we can see the right issues getting to the right place and the right people, given the geography, given the issue.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so going back to the action tracker, from the top, I know the register and declarations of interest has been updated. We then go to 3B and 6C, which are both with Jo. Have you got an update on either of those, Jo?
Yes, so 3B, sorry, I was focused on
right.
6C. So 6C, definitely we are... Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? 6C, we are definitely continuing to work on the primary care development plan. It's going to primary care commissioning group on the 3rd of June, and then I think we will bring it back as part of the obviously the final board meeting in June. We've got the close down around there, but there's also an opportunity for, again, coming back with Section 75 and some of the work we're doing locally and how that feeds in to the ICS. So that will be picked up in primary care commissioning group and at the next board. 3B, apologies, I had missed that one, the summary of actions.
And that dates back to February, so that's probably a bit further away than you can remember. Can you please let Jane have an update that will circulate?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. And Michelle, are you able to update on 7B and 7C? And if not, can we formally request that from Bernie to go in for next time?
If I could take my mute button off, I'll be able to talk. So, okay. So yes, we on 7B, this is where we were debating the IAPT performance and whether our positive minds had an impact on that specific metric. So we did go back and ask that question, and yes, we believe that in some ways this is a success story, isn't it? That Positive Minds is a service that we've stood up, and it was expected to have a level of referral into IAPT, but it hasn't had as much referral into IAPT, which is a good thing. because obviously they're trying to deal with the patients that come to Positive Minds and support those patients, and therefore has reduced the onward referral. And then they also have the added benefit of preparing patients if they do need to go to onward referral and IAP. So it's a success story which we might need to think about how we have an answer if that continues to be the case, that we have lower referrals into IAPT, because obviously we know that's a national a national performance target. So I just thought I'd feed that back, and we will send this out as a typed response. And in terms of 7C, where we were looking at the RAG ratings around the programme report, and maybe the way it was currently shown might look like something was green when actually it isn't, and it still needs an action. So we fed that back, and that we are continually updating that report to make that clearer to people. So hopefully, in future it will be clearer about where things are green and okay, and where the things still need some action to happen.
Thank you, because I think it was particularly around that it was green, but the outcomes weren't right.
That's right.
The process had happened, and
yes,
the plan had been carried out, but the outcome required had not been met. So it was getting that.
Yeah, and I think
process and outcome is.
Yeah, and I think to some people they understood that was what it was trying to say, but it's making it clearer to an audience that isn't used to seeing that report. And I think that was the feedback that you gave, and that was certainly taking that back, and hopefully at future iterations we'll make that much clearer.
Thank you. Karen, the workforce plans to be shared with governing board members.
This was what I just mentioned. This wasn't my action. My action was around. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, my action was around determining the timescales for the thematic review into the serious incidents as a result of the urgent care pathway issues. We discussed it at QSEC this morning, and I think we're being ambitious, but think that it might have completed by July, end of July. So, but we think that even that might be optimistic.
Okay, thank you though for that. So then, Justina, ambulance handover score to be reviewed in the risk register.
Yes, Chair, I can confirm that that's been done, and it'll be in the risk register that you'll see in June.
Lovely. And Sarah's not here to update, I don't think. So we've still got that outstanding. Jane, can I ask you to ask for an official update for the next meeting from Sarah, please?
Okay, we'll do. Yeah, sure.
Lovely. Thank you. Right. So we can move. Excuse me. Move on to the meat of the meeting, which is our integrated commissioning and governance arrangements with the City Council.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth.
Joe.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And you have had a report, a paper attached to them. We have got a presentation to share to pull out some of the key points, recognising this is a quite big, significant piece of work for the board, and also helps support us as we transition into the ICS and into the ICB and integrated care partnership arrangements that Maggie has mentioned. So if you're happy for me to go through the presentation, I will do that. Is that okay, Elizabeth? Just to draw out the salient points, really. So Kelly is my able assistant, or it might be Justina, as we weren't sure if Kelly could make it. But ladies, if you could move to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. Is that working? Yeah, cool. So again, this really encompasses, as Maggie said, what are our arrangements moving into the ICB, the Integrated Care Partnership Board for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and how do we build on the good work that we've already got in relation to integration across health and care in the city. And there's a huge opportunity, I think, as we move into an integrated care system for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, for us to strengthen the partnerships across health and care, both locally and working at scale, to really improve health outcomes and reduce health inequalities. And that, as we know, is one of the key aims of the ICS as we move forward. And some of the proposals that we set out today are very much in the direction of the integration white paper. And as Maggie said, we've got a real opportunity now to develop in Hampshire and Isle of Wight to take this agenda forward over the coming weeks and months as we move forward, not just in the city, but thinking about how we move together across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and strengthening those health and care partnerships more broadly. And it is really important, I think, that we see this work in that wider context, so that it is part of the direction of travel, and that it's part of how we work within Portsmouth, but also within Hampshire and the Isle of Wight with other partners. And what we're hoping is that the work that we've presented today continues that integration and collaborative working that has been so key and so important to the CCG board and the City Council, but again, just building on what we've got before, and that's that strong history of partnership working. We need to really move that into the ICS space to continue to work with other partners outside of the city as well as we work in the city, and really learn from them and share in order that we can improve those health outcomes. And we're hoping that this work that we've been doing will set out a good platform from which we can move forward, but also will help other partners in the Isle of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight to build on some of the work that we've done around the Section 75 framework. And actually the conversations that I've had with our internal audit yesterday around those integration arrangements, they really recognise that the framework, partnership work and the work we've done with Bevan Britton and the council could be really helpful for other partners across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and sets out a really good framework that others can learn from, shape, etc. as works from them. So just wanted to emphasise really, although this is important to us in Portsmouth, it is part of the direction of travel, but it's also important that we work collectively across the Isle of Wight and work together on how we strengthen those partnerships as well. So next slide, please. And again, building on that, we're now getting clearer on what the operating framework might look like for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and we're engaging on what the place-based leadership arrangements might look like, looking at how that supports the ICB arrangements. Again, this is an engagement piece, so it's very much about how what we're doing in Portsmouth works in the city, but also works and supports how others are developing as well, and recognising that it's an and as well as, not an either or. So how do we work well at place, as well as working well in the Portsmouth South East Hampshire system, and working into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, so we come together at scale. At the moment, we're looking at the delegation and governance arrangements from the 1st of July. A working assumption that at the moment we will continue to discharge in the place some of the functions that are current commissioning functions currently carried out by the PC, Portsmouth City Primary Care, Portsmouth Clinical Commissioning Group, and that the existing Section 75 arrangements continue to be governed by the Portsmouth Health and Care Partnership. So continuing our joint commissioning arrangements that we have in place. Again, that's not to say all of this is set in stone, but it's about that transition and making sure that transition is safe, and as Maggie said, that we don't destabilise things, but we have a platform to work from. We believe the approach that we're setting out and the delegation and governance arrangements around the Section 75 will give us an opportunity to work in a phased way to continue that integration that focuses on the local priorities within the city, but how that then feeds into the ICS space, and really doing that in a collaborative way with the ICS executive team and other place directors to make sure that what we do in one area doesn't have unintended consequences for any other areas. And again, it's how we also look at what we can make best use of and do well at scale together. You know, because some things will have to change and some things will be better done at scale or in the local delivery system rather than being done in each place, and we can really benefit from those economies of scale, but again need to do that collaboratively and thinking through how will that work so we maximize it and don't have unintended consequences. Next slide please. So again, the ICS operating model is familiar to us and just reiterates that point, I think, about the role of the integrated care partnership, the integrated care board, how we work at place, and I think that's well established for us in Portsmouth, but also thinking how do we feed into the local delivery system, and that provider collaboration across Portsmouth and South East Hampshire, but also again primary care networks, mental health provider collaboratives and the acute provider collaboratives, so that we are working at place and in the local delivery system, the LDS, but also that we are feeding into shaping, helping to shape, and also being directed by some of those ICS wide programs and working through together how that all fits together and where we make best use of things. So again, really understanding that is the work that everyone is doing at the moment, and we're feeding into that really proactively. Next slide please. So this slide just takes from some of the thinking that's happening in the ICS at the moment and the model that's out for engagement at the moment that people are thinking through, and that looks at a place director for each of our 4 places across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, how that is supported by clinical leadership and nursing and AHP leadership, but also how that might deliver in the local delivery system space and support local delivery system development initially as well. And we've just added to that how our local authority in Portsmouth supports that, and we've got the Director of Adult Services, Director of Children's Services and Director of Public Health, and continuing that single team approach at an executive level in the city, but again working very much in the ICB space and recognising that link between the place director and the city council is really, really important, and the section 113 agreement as part of Health and Care Portsmouth can continue within that model, and again working at scale but also collaboratively at place as well. Next slide please. So in terms of what that means for the section 75 and the work that we've been doing, it is really about making sure we're taking a really measured approach so that we're not setting anything in place that, you know, setting anything up that can't then change and flex. And I think one of the strengths of the way we work has always been about that flexibility and agility and being agile and being able to adapt as we need to meet the needs of the population. So we need to be assured that what we're setting up here is fit for purpose as we move into the future. And again, on that vein, that's really important when we think about the funding. How do we make sure that we can have that flexibility, as well, recognising the funding pressures that we have across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight and across both health and care. So the arrangements that we're proposing within the section 75 are all on the basis of aligned budgets with joint commissioning arrangements, exceptionally with the exception of where that pooling is already notionally in place for some of our CHC agreements already. And that is really important, because what we've found when we've done the work on CHC, actually we don't need to truly pool the budgets. Having the aligned budgets and the joint commissioning approach enables us to meet our objectives. And it's that transparency of the Portsmouth pound that is really makes the difference in being able to understand what the local authority is spending, what the NHS is spending, and seeing how you can get the benefits for that money is what's so important, and not, you know, as we know, not fighting over who pays, but really focusing on how do we get the best value across our organisations. And again, really important as well that we harness the commitment from the local authority as well, and the benefits that this can bring from their perspective too. Again, as I say, this is very much a phased approach, and recognising that some functions that currently sit within the CCG responsibility will morph over time and probably be managed at scale into the ICB wide arrangements. And we've given so where we think that's something that might happen, we've taken those out of the scope of the Section 75 arrangements. So they're things like inpatient mental health, planned and elective care, sort of that out of area contracting, some of the primary care core contracts, and prescribing, where you can perhaps really get the benefit of doing those things once together at scale. That's not to say they're the only things, or that is the final destination for those things, but where the thinking is at the moment, we think it makes sense to exclude those for now and to continue to do some work. We have again looked at, you know, what budgets will be managed where, and the delegation that will come into place around some of the existing contracts, but also that some of the newer investment that will come in will need to be managed at system level. So things like the SDF, which I think stands for Service Development Fund, apologies, will be managed at system. That absolutely makes sense because it's new money coming into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And it makes sense that we consider that collectively to think about how do we best spend that to meet needs across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, but also making sure that we have the input from all of the local places to ensure that that all comes together and that recurrent investment is not done at the expense of other priorities. So some, as we move forward, really looking at how we spend our money collectively together and getting the best value is going to be really important. And some of that will need to enable us to make local decisions quickly and together with partners in the city, but also that opportunity to feed into wider priorities and to shape those priorities, but also to think about how we can do that collective, you know, differently together. Our key local action is to conclude the Section 75 arrangements around those wider work programmes enabling functions over the next few months. So where we're aiming, and it's set out in the paper, is to agree the overarching framework, which I'll talk about in a minute, that enables our existing arrangements to continue, to set up the relevant schedules over the next few months where they might be new, and to then really work in with the ICS to understand what else could be managed locally, what else might we want in Section 75 arrangements. And those conversations aren't just happening in Portsmouth, they're happening in all of our places to understand how we can really maximise the benefits of integration. Next slide, please, Kelly. Okay, so where we've thought with this, as we've talked about, there's an overarching framework with a number of schedules that enables us to move flexibly and to change those schedules on an annual basis without having to change the whole Section 75 arrangement. And where we think some of the things that we can work best at place and together across health and care are our integrated community care model, some of that early intervention, the wraparound the patient, the wraparound teams around PCNs. And a lot of that is covered in the BCF already. The CHC and ECRs and the resilience of the care sector marketplace. So we've had some huge gains in that, the way we work across CHC. How can we expand that into ECRs and the way we work together across the health and care landscape around supporting the independent care sector? Children's services and really embedding our children's services 0 to 19 approach and the integration we've already got around that. health improvement, so again, health outcomes and using the public health grant effectively, and vulnerable adults, some of those really complex care patients that we know we have in the city. So next slide, please. Again, what we're looking at, and it's set out in the paper for you, is that we roll over. So the agreement today is to agree the sections, the overarching framework with the existing funding, and then over the coming months, under those two phases, we will look at how we move the ECR budget in as a priority, and children's, will that work? How do we make sure that works for the whole ICS, not just Portsmouth? But then looking again with other places, what else could we put in these joint arrangements? And this just sets out what the anticipated future position could be. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about that. Again, just how will we govern this is really important. We've got a really good joint commissioning board at the moment, but we really want to move that to be our Health and Care Portsmouth place-based partnership. So with the ICB and the City Council, next bit, sorry. Oh, you just click down. Again, how do we make those decisions jointly in the place with our other partners is something we will need to consider and continue to consider and explore, and that's part of the work over the coming months. Next slide, please. Again, don't want to go into this too much. I think I've already said a lot of it. Thinking as well about what do the City Council need from the ICB and the NHS in the future to continue some of those informal but also those formal relationships, and where the CCG is statutory partners, how we continue to move and enable that. We think this model will help us really cement that as we move forward as well, and make sure we don't lose some of those objectives from the council as well, but also thinking how we do that at scale as well. Next slide, please. Again, we've been asked about what difference does this work make? What are some of the outcomes? We've started to do some of that. We've still got more work to do, but what it has helped, I think, is that relationship has helped us keep some of the costs down in our system, and to really look at how, and particularly around local authority and strengthening and maximising the use of that Portsmouth pound. We need to think about in the future, how do we do that more around outcomes? Next slide, please. Again, just to remind you, we've had some of these conversations as well. This is an overarching agreement that you're being asked to agree today. It sets out the baseline partnership arrangements. There's no risk sharing in this, no financial risk sharing. It's aligned budgets and joint commissioning. It really is about that transparency, where we can come together and have those conversations in a way that we know has worked through our existing agreements. Next slide. Again, talked about some of those aims as well, and where we think this could bring us benefit, but we really want to, on those ones that are new, really test that out with our ICS colleagues. But as a priority, we'll be looking at children's services and the ECRs, but also keeping the conversations going about vulnerable adults, health improvement and health inequalities, and the enabling functions. So where we've got those joint arrangements, those will continue. We're also looking at how we can perhaps restructure the BCF so that we can continue to work this way in those other schedules. Next slide, please. And again, looking at this from the City Council perspective, City Council have committed quite a lot of additional resource to go into the Section 75, and I think that's really positive. And that will move their budgets from 57 million to a potential of 163 million, that we again can have that transparency across those 5 schedules. But again, we're working in that phased, measured way to make sure that it's aligned with what other areas are doing and that there's no unintended consequences. But you know, I think it's really significant from a City Council perspective as well in that partnership. Next slide, please. And again, this just reiterates the finances that I've talked about. So a rollover at the moment, phase 1 could increase that by another 24 million around some of the ECRs. phase 2 a bit more, and then the anticipated future position. But again, these are just examples for the board to consider and to understand the work that we're doing. None of this is set in stone other than the existing and money that we've got in those agreements, which will continue if you approve this. Next one. And again, just looking at how it all fits together, you know, the Section 75 is an enabler. It helps us give the transparency and ability to have different conversations, and it gives our team that as well. But it all needs to link in with the ICS wide priorities and the local priorities for the Health and Wellbeing Board. And actually, I think we haven't done it, but we were pulled out again that ICS Health and Wellbeing Board is a two-way arrow between them as well. So apologies, we haven't got that one in there yet. Next slide. And that's it. So being really clear, just to reiterate the recommendations that are in the paper. I'd like you to note the work that we're doing to shape the structures and how we fit within that, to approve the Section 75 agreement, to approve the proposed schedules for the BCF continuing healthcare and Health and Care Portsmouth commissioning, which are in existence and haven't changed, to endorse our ambition to continue to move forward, as you know, to include ECRs and children's community services and the integrated Health and Care Portsmouth communications. Ideally, we'd like to do that by the 1st of July, but we recognise there's lots of conversations ongoing in that, and we would want to bring that back to you in June. But also recognising that whilst there are priorities, there's still more work to be done, and for the board to note that. And then finally, we're asking that you delegate responsibility to the place director within that proposed structure to agree the final amendments and to authorise the execution of the agreement until the end, until the end of June, as we make minor changes to where we are. So that's it. Apologies, I hope that wasn't too long. I was conscious of time, but hopefully that does give the board the full understanding of the work we're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Jo. That's very comprehensive. So, questions? Jackie and Linda.
Thank you, Jo. That was really, really helpful, and I think the presentation really clarifies things perhaps more than I got so from the paper, because it really clarifies the role of the Health and Wellbeing Board and the ICS and where it fits in together with the place-based managing director and the team that they have around them. One of the things in the actual contract that isn't explicit, but I feel much more assured about, is that this, of course, is between two people up to the 30th of June, but beyond that, we don't make reference to the successor organisation taking over these arrangements. And I don't know if that's something that would actually be helpful within that document, rather than us assume it with, a fair degree of confidence, but it's not explicitly written there.
Yeah, no, you're right, Jackie. So obviously, for now, this agreement is for the board to approve, the CCG board, but it would be wrong, and none of us would want to do that without having the agreement support of the ICS as the successor organisation, and that's why we're looking to do that in a phased way. What we can agree and what will then move to the successor organisation, the ICB, today, is that we can approve that overarching framework and our existing commitments that we have across our 3 Section 75. So this will then, if it's agreed today, that this new approach will go through to the ICB as a successor organisation. And the way we've tried to work that is that they are in support of this, and at the moment we're tidying up and making better our existing arrangements so that they go into that successor body in a much more flexible up-to-date way, really, that we as a board then can continue to work with them on to look at, is there further we can go more quickly before the end of June, but also that sets the pace, if you like, and continued dialogue within the ICB and the City Council, so it makes it easier for us to continue those discussions as we move forward, but also for them to flex and adapt through the schedules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's very helpful, and I feel that assurance that this is something that goes, you know, the idea, the framework is well across all of us as part of the ICB, and that we've left space for development.
Yeah.
But okay, thank you.
Yeah, and this framework could be used by any other area, and they could adapt their own schedules, because it sets out quite a high level overarching agreement that you don't then need to get too much into the detail with, or change, or worry about having to vary and change, because they're quite tricky documents, the Section 75.
And it was nice to see that we've started to see shape of what is at place. It would be hard not to have, I don't know how to put it, you don't want to create a mini board at place, but I'm guessing we need regular meetings with everybody at place. Okay, and again, I don't know, and I don't want to, I'm not wanting to be self-serving, but I don't know if there's space with that for a sort of independent review of what happens at place or not. I'm just putting it out there to an answer.
I think they're all conversations that we will need to have, and the Health and Care Partnership board at place, what does that look like, and those ongoing, what does that governance need to look like, are very live conversations. And I know Health Watch are very keen on that as well, and understanding how do they feed into some of those conversations.
Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you, Linda, then Margaret and Graham.
Thank you. I just really wanted to commend the teams for the work that's gone into this. I mean, it's not to be underestimated. This has taken a lot of work across not only place, but with the ICS executives as well, really getting underneath this. And as Jackie said, it's really lovely to start seeing how place is going to work alongside the added benefits of working, at Hampshire and Isle of Wight level. So, yeah, just commend the teams, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret?
Getting very slow in my old age. Just wanted to ask, really it's a question for Maggie, because I mean, I think it's really good that the ICS has been involved in these discussions, and I'm very supportive of this Section 75. But how will has any thought been given, and I know you've got loads to think about, Maggie, but has any thought been given to how the ICB will support the 4 different place-based partnerships to work at their own pace towards ever closer health and care integration, so that places that have more of a track record in integrated working are not held back, and places that haven't got the same history in integrated working don't have to have some kind of generic model imposed on them. Question.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to answer that, because I think it's a constant theme. So I want to be really clear about it, that Lena Samuels and I are absolutely in the business of not slowing anything down, encouraging people with the track record to crack on, learning, sharing. So yeah, I know you keep asking me that question. It's about, the proof will be, do we do it, not in writing it down. We absolutely, the problems we face will never be solved by slowing integration down. They'll be solved by speeding it up with a rigorous focus on outcomes and what integration means for outcomes. So yeah, absolutely. There doesn't have to be one size fits all, because Portsmouth is different to Southampton, is different to the Isle of Wight, is different to Hampshire. However, I think we will be in the business of unwarranted variation, and the board will be really curious, interested, forensic about where difference cannot be accounted for due to populations. So yeah, we're absolutely committed to doing this and getting it right. And Jo is working really closely with colleagues in other parts of the system. So we do the share, the learn. so that, you know, we just take real advantage of the difference that faces us, and we take advantage of where some people have made progress in one area and others not. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Graham.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question. So just really to follow behind Linda and say thanks for the work and fully endorse the programme and the ambition in the programme as well. I think obviously historically our integration journey in Portsmouth has been really positive and one of the leaders in the country, and I think this lays a really good platform to enable that to continue and do what we all want, which is maximise the health and care outcomes for the communities in Portsmouth. So very much supportive of it.
Thank you very much, Graham, and I would wholeheartedly endorse what you said. So, as a board, let's go through these recommendations or these statements one at a time, make sure we've got this clear. We've been asked to note the work undertaken to shape the structures and the work that's taken place within Portsmouth and the wider work. Are people happy with that? You had enough information for that? We are being asked to approve the overarching Section 75 agreement. Are people happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. We're also being asked to approve the schedules for Better Care Funds, Continuing Healthcare and Health and Care Portsmouth Commissioning, which were the previous Section 75 agreements in their own right. Thank you. We're also being asked to endorse the ambition to increase funding arrangements alongside Portsmouth City Council's commitment to include an additional 48 million within the Section 75 arrangements. As a first step, the priority is to include extra contractual referrals, children's community services and HCP communications funding, with an aim for these to be agreed by the 1st of July. Everyone good? 2 more to go. Note and support that in the coming months further work will be undertaken in collaboration as part of the ICB development arrangements to further develop and extend the aligned funding arrangements within the Section 75 arrangement. Yeah. And finally, we are being asked to delegate the responsibilities of the place director, that's Joe, to agree final amendments and to authorise the execution of the agreement in the final form.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all very much. This has meant a lot to me. So I'll just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've done very little of the work, but I've done a lot of the talking. So anyway, so that is the only business for today. We've got the next governing board meetings to be held in public on the 22nd of June, 2 till 5, and will be streamed on Teams. And at this point, we will draw this meeting to a close. So thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair. There is one more thing that before we draw this meeting to a close that we need to do, and that is to thank you for all the work that you have done, for enabling us to do all the work that we do, and you've got me at it now. So this is your last meeting with us. You've been our chair since 2016, but you've been a commissioning lead in Portsmouth for so much longer than that. I think going back to 1999, and a GP in Portsmouth for even longer than that. So you have been absolutely amazing, Elizabeth, to work for. Your no nonsense, straightforward approach, not afraid to question, not afraid to challenge, but also really willing to listen and support and empower us to do the things we do. We are really, really grateful to you, and we will really miss you. So on behalf of everybody, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Elizabeth.
Okay. lots of claps. Thank you. I will draw the meeting to a close now, and then we those that are joining us for the development session need to log back into the next meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.